Welcome to another episode of Management Unplugged by GR. We are about to embark on a deep dive into a concept that, if you're like me, might sound a little, well, maybe a bit academic at first glance. Maybe even a touch like something you'd see on a dry corporate PowerPoint slide.
Right, I know the kind.
But trust me, by the end of this deep dive, you're going to see it as one of the most powerful and frankly, practical tools out there for anyone trying to navigate the complexities of their organization, or, let's be honest, just trying to get your entire household aligned on where the clean socks actually belong.
Yeah, a map for that would be useful.
I could certainly use one sometimes, but seriously, think about it. Have you ever felt like you're trying to achieve a really important goal, maybe a big project or a strategic shift, but the pathway just isn't clear for everyone involved? You've got this grand vision, maybe a brilliant strategy on paper, but somehow it just gets lost in translation down the line. Different departments end up pulling in slightly different directions, or key initiatives stall because maybe no one quite grasps how their specific piece fits into the larger puzzle.
Oh, absolutely. It's a classic problem, really. So many brilliant strategies fail, and it's often not because they were bad ideas in the first place.
Right.
It's because they weren't fully understood or effectively communicated throughout the whole organization.
Yeah.
It's like everyone's trying to build the same amazing house, theoretically, but they're all working from slightly different, incomplete blueprints.
Yeah.
The result, it's not going to look like the architect intended.
That's a great analogy, and it really highlights the core communication challenge, doesn't it?
It really does. Without that shared understanding, that common blueprint, it's truly like a general trying to command troops in completely foreign territory without a comprehensive map. Chaos and failure are almost guaranteed in that scenario. Imagine a general needing to communicate a complex campaign strategy. They absolutely need those detailed visuals of the terrain, the towns, the landscapes, the critical bridges, the winding roads. Without that clear visual map, how can you possibly expect your field officers, let alone the rest of the troops, to understand their role, their direction, and critically, how their specific movements connect to the overall objective?
They can't.
Exactly. Businesses face this exact challenge day in, day out. If your employees don't have that clear visual map of the strategy, how can they possibly execute the plan cohesively? It just won't happen effectively.
And that's the missing piece, isn't it? That single, clear map that everyone can look at, understand, and actually use to guide their actions day to day.
Precisely.
And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today, something called strategy maps.
Our mission today really is to unpack what these strategy maps are all about. Why they're arguably more important than ever in today's, let's face it, incredibly complex business world.
Yeah.
How they provide this amazing clarity through different yet interconnected lenses, and ultimately how they help entire organizations, large and small, move in lockstep toward shared success. It's really about turning that high-level aspiration into a tangible, executable pathway that everyone can follow.
And to really bring it to life, move from the theory to the real-world impact. We'll even look at a fantastic, truly transformative example from mobile.
Oh, yeah. That's a great case.
We'll see exactly how they use strategy maps to literally rebuild their entire business model and become an absolute industry leader. So get ready to navigate some truly fascinating strategic terrain with us today, unpacking the concept. What exactly are strategy maps? Okay, let's unpack this then. Expert, when we talk about mapping strategy, what's the fundamental difference between, say, just having a list of goals or maybe a mission statement hanging on the wall and what a strategy map actually achieves? How does it go beyond just listing what we want to do?
Yeah, that's a really crucial distinction to make right off the bat. Because while it is a visual representation, its real power lies not just in its appearance, but in what it represents, and more importantly, how it connects everything.
Okay.
At its core, a strategy map is essentially a tool providing a visual picture of a company's critical objectives. But here's the key part. It also shows the explicit cause and effect relationships among those objectives that actually drive organizational performance.
Ah, cause and effect.
Exactly. Think of it less like a static picture and more like a dynamic blueprint. It illustrates exactly how your organization creates value step by logical step. It offers what Kaplan and Norton called a clear line of sight for every single employee.
A clear line of sight.
Yeah, it explicitly links their individual jobs, their daily tasks, their departmental goals directly back to the overall objectives of the entire organization. It shows how their work matters in the grand scheme.
So it's not just a random collection of objectives floating around in space, but it's a dynamic diagram that shows how achieving one goal directly enables or leads to another. Like a chain reaction almost, or like setting up dominoes.
Precisely. That's a perfect way to think about it.
Mhm.
Remember our analogy of the general and the troops.
Yeah.
You don't just shout, "Win the battle," at them. You provide them with detailed maps showing every strategic point, the towns they need to secure, the choke points like bridges they need to control, the intricate network of roads they need to use for movement.
Right, the details matter.
Immensely. Just as a general needs this detailed topography to communicate a comprehensive campaign strategy effectively, businesses need strategy maps. They ensure that employees understand what they need to do, sure, but perhaps even more importantly, why it's important. How their individual efforts actually contribute to the larger victory, the overall strategic goals. Without this level of detail and shared understanding, companies often stumble pretty badly when it comes to execution, because people simply can't effectively carry out a plan they don't fully grasp or, crucially, see your own part in.
Got it. So it's about more than just knowing your specific marching orders for the day. It's about knowing how your particular march fits into the grand strategy and seeing visually how the whole army, the whole organization moves together in concert.
Exactly. That shared picture is key. Strategy maps enable truly coordinated collaborative work towards those desired goals. They don't just list objectives, they explicitly show the cause and effect links. The logic by which specific improvements in one area will lead directly to desired outcomes in another.
Can you give an example of that?
Sure. So a strategy map might clearly illustrate, for instance, how achieving faster process cycle times within a specific department, maybe manufacturing,
Okay.
combined with enhanced employee capabilities through some targeted training. How those two things together will directly contribute to an increase in customer retention. And then how that, in turn, will ultimately increase the company's revenues and profitability. It shows that logical, sequential flow of strategic thinking.
Like connecting the dots.
Exactly. Think of it like tuning a high-performance engine. You don't just list faster car as the goal on a piece of paper. You explicitly show how improving the fuel injection system, that's the cause, leads to more horsepower.
Oh.
That's the effect, which then contributes to a faster lap time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Strategy maps reveal these crucial if-then statements, the cause and effect logic that drives performance. This ensures everyone understands how their actions ripple through the organization and contribute to the ultimate outcomes.
So it's really about the how, not just the what, how you're going to achieve it step by step, and crucially, how those steps connect and build on each other logically.
Yes, exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, strategy maps truly show how an organization intends to convert its various initiatives and resources, and this is absolutely key, including those often overlooked intangible assets.
Intangible assets, like
A
what?
corporate culture, employee knowledge and skills, customer relationships, information systems, things that aren't on the traditional balance sheet but are hugely valuable.
Right.
The map shows how you convert all of that, including those intangibles, into tangible outcomes, like increased revenue, better margins, or greater market share. And this profound recognition of intangible assets is a fundamental shift in how we think about value creation today.
Ah.
And it makes strategy maps so vital in today's information-driven economy, which actually leads us perfectly into our next point,
Two.
the shifting landscape, why strategy maps are crucial in the information age.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. Why do we need these maps now, more than ever before? What's fundamentally changed in how businesses operate that makes having this visual map so crucial? It certainly wasn't always like this, was it? Did Henry Ford have a strategy map? Probably not.
Probably not in this format, no. You're absolutely right. It wasn't always this way. And to truly grasp this fundamental shift, we really need to contrast the industrial age with what we now call the information age.
Okay.
Back in the industrial age, value creation was, relatively speaking, pretty straightforward. It was primarily about transforming raw materials into finished physical products. Think factories, production lines.
Right, making stuff.
Exactly, making tangible stuff. The economy was built almost entirely on tangible assets, things you could literally see and touch, things that could be counted, valued, and itemized clearly on a balance sheet. We're talking inventory, land, factories, heavy machinery, equipment.
Physical assets.
Physical assets. And for that era, the traditional financial accounting tools, things like ledgers, income statements, balance sheets, were perfectly sufficient to describe a company's strategy and measure its performance. If you wanted to know how a textile mill was doing, you looked at its looms, its inventory of cotton bales, its cash flow, Everything was quantifiable and visible in that traditional accounting sense.
Clear, measurable, straightforward, physical stuff you could literally put a price tag on, weigh, count.
Precisely. But now fast forward to the information age, today's economy. Businesses increasingly create value by creating and deploying what we call intangible assets.
Okay, those things you mentioned earlier.
Yes. These are things you can't necessarily touch or hold or even easily measure with those traditional accounting methods, but they are immensely, critically valuable. We're talking about things like deep, loyal customer relationships built over time, the unique skills and collective knowledge embedded within your workforce. Sophisticated information technologies, proprietary software, patented processes, and perhaps one of the most elusive but powerful of all, a corporate culture that actively encourages innovation, collaborative problem-solving, and continuous organizational improvement.
Yeah, that culture thing is huge, but hard to pin down.
It is. Think of a cutting-edge software company or a top-tier consulting firm. Their most valuable assets often literally walk out the door every evening when their employees go home. You can't put that on a traditional balance sheet easily.
That's a fascinating distinction. So the old financial tools, the ones designed for factories and inventory, they just don't capture the true value or the strategic engine of a company that's built on these intangible assets. They simply weren't designed for that kind of value creation.
Exactly. And this raises a really important question, doesn't it? It's where the profound insight lies. How do you even begin to measure the value of something as elusive as a positive, innovative corporate culture, or the collective brilliance of a highly skilled collaborative workforce, let alone integrate it meaningfully into a strategic plan and show how it drives results?
Right. How do you map that?
The inherent difficulty is that no traditional tools really existed to describe these intangible assets, and they're often complex, sometimes indirect contribution to creating value. And what makes it even more challenging, trickier, is that the value of these intangible assets is highly context-dependent. It's intrinsically tied to a company's specific strategy. Their value isn't universal like a ton of steel. It's activated, it's unlocked by how they're strategically deployed within a particular business model.
Okay, that makes it even more complex. It's not just an asset you buy off the shelf like a machine. Its true worth depends entirely on how you integrate and leverage it within your unique strategic context.
That's exactly right. Let's elaborate on that interconnectedness, because this is a really crucial aha moment for understanding why maps are needed. Imagine a company pursuing a growth-oriented sales strategy, right?
Okay.
To succeed, this strategy isn't just about hiring more salespeople or launching one new product. It typically requires a whole bundle of related intangible assets working together, in concert, synergistically.
Like what kind of things?
Well, you'd probably need deep, actionable knowledge about your customer segments, advanced sales training for your team, maybe new databases and CRM systems to track leads and measure engagement effectively, perhaps even a different organizational structure to support new sales channels, and definitely new incentive programs to motivate that peak performance.
Okay, a whole system.
A whole system. And what's crucial here is that investing in just one of those items, say, you buy the fancy new CRM database, but provide no training for your salespeople on how to use it effectively.
That won't work.
Or maybe you invest in a few of them, but not the entire interconnected set required by the strategy. Well, that would likely cause the whole strategy to fail, or at least significantly underperform. The true value, the real leverage, doesn't reside in any individual intangible asset in isolation. It arises from the entire set of assets working together, synergistically linked by the specific strategy.
Wow. Okay, so the value is in the combination, the strategic alignment. That's a big shift in thinking.
It is.
So if these intangible assets became so vital for creating value, and the old tools simply couldn't measure them properly or connect them strategically, how did we bridge that gaping chasm? What emerged to actually solve this measurement and communication problem?
That's where the balanced scorecard comes into the picture. It was developed back in the early 90s precisely to address this challenge, to help organizations measure performance much more holistically, looking beyond just the traditional financial metrics. It brought in 4 interconnected perspectives.
Right. You mentioned those earlier.
Yes. Briefly summarized, it essentially tells you, first, the knowledge, skills, and systems that your employees will need. That's the foundation, what we call the learning and growth perspective.
Okay.
These capabilities then enable your people to innovate and build the right strategic capabilities and efficiencies within their operations. This is the internal processes perspective, how the work gets done.
Got it.
These optimized internal processes then allow you to deliver specific, differentiated value to the market, directly addressing the customer perspective. What makes you special to them?
Makes sense.
And finally, all of this, when executed well, eventually leads to higher shareholder value and sustained financial success. Which brings us back to the financial perspective at the top.
Okay, so it's a direct chain of cause and effect already built right into the balanced scorecard concept itself. Learning leads to better processes, leads to happy customers, leads to financial success.
Exactly. It provides that strategic logic. And the strategy maps came from this framework, essentially evolving it further and making it visual.
Where did that happen?
Precisely. Since the balanced scorecard concept was first introduced back in 1992, there's been extensive research done with literally hundreds of executive teams from a really wide range of organizations all over the globe.
Wow.
And from this vast real-world experience, testing it in practice, certain powerful, consistent patterns started to emerge. They consistently demonstrated how these four perspectives were interconnected and how they influence each other in practice.
Okay.
And strategy maps emerged from that research as a common, powerful visual framework. They essentially embed the different objectives on an organization's balanced scorecard into a clear, intuitive cause and effect chain. They explicitly connect the desired outcomes with the specific drivers of those results. It's basically the visual language that makes the scorecard truly actionable and understandable for everyone.
That's a really powerful evolution. So it's not just some theoretical concept dreamed up in an ivory tower somewhere. It's actually born from real-world application, tested and refined across incredibly diverse industries and countless companies facing genuine strategic challenges.
Absolutely, that's its strength.
Yeah.
We've seen these maps developed and successfully applied for companies in virtually every industry you can imagine. Insurance, banking, retail, healthcare, chemicals, energy, telecommunications, e-commerce, you name it. And they've also proven incredibly useful for nonprofit organizations and even government units who are looking to clarify their mission, their strategy, and their impact. Their broad applicability truly underscores their power as a kind of universal language for describing and communicating strategy. 3. The 4 lenses. Understanding the strategy map template.
Okay, so what does one of these maps actually look like in practice? I'm picturing something. But are there standard components, or is every map a completely unique artistic creation? Because if it's truly a universal language for strategy, like you said, there must be some common structure, right? Otherwise, it wouldn't be universally understandable.
You've hit on a really key point there. There is a standard template, and that consistency is actually part of its power and widespread adoption. It typically has 4 distinct regions or perspectives, which, as we've just been discussing, correspond directly to those 4 perspectives of the balanced scorecard: financial, customer, internal process, and learning and growth.
Okay, those 4 layers.
Those 4 layers. And these 4 lenses, viewed together, provide a comprehensive, logical view of pretty much any strategy.
So it's like having a common blueprint for any house, even if the specific details inside, the furniture and the decor are totally different depending on the owner.
Precisely. That's a great way to put it. You can compare it quite effectively to financial statements and accounting. Financial statements provide a common framework and language that can be used to describe the financial performance of any company, regardless of its industry. Strategy maps do the same for strategy. They provide that common framework and language, making strategy incredibly clear and generally understandable, no matter the industry or the specific business context. The map enables an organization to describe and illustrate, in clear and pretty general language, its strategic objectives, the specific initiatives it plans to pursue to achieve those objectives, its performance targets or KPIs, the specific measures it will use to assess performance, like market share, customer satisfaction surveys, process cycle times, and crucially, the foundational linkages, those cause and effect arrows that define the strategic direction and the causal relationships between objectives.
So how do you actually build one? Where do you start? Top, bottom, middle?
Generally, you build a map using a top-down approach, much like designing that house you mentioned. You start right at the top by reviewing the company's fundamental mission and its core values, essentially. Why does the company exist, and what does it fundamentally believe in?
Okay, the big picture stuff.
The big picture foundation. With that foundation firmly in place, managers can then develop a clear strategic vision, which is essentially defining what the company wants to become in the future. For example, the vision might be to become the recognized profit leader in our industry, or to be the most innovative company, or the most customer-centric.
Got it.
The strategy map then defines the logical pathway, the clear, explicit cause and effect logic of how the organization plans to arrive at that desired destination, that vision. It maps out the journey.
Okay, let's start at the very top then, where the rubber meets the road, so to speak, and where value is ultimately measured for most businesses. The financial perspective, what typically goes in there? What are we looking at?
Right. The financial perspective is typically placed at the very top of the map, at least for for-profit entities, because its primary focus is usually on increasing shareholder value or economic value added. This is often the ultimate outcome the business is trying to achieve.
Makes sense.
Now, it's worth noting, as you alluded to, that for nonprofits or government units, their ultimate value creation might be defined differently. Maybe it's maximizing value for their customers or constituents. In those cases, they might actually place the customer or stakeholder perspective at the very top of their map. But for a typical business, it's usually about the financials.
Okay, so what are the main ways companies drive financial success according to this model?
Broadly speaking, companies generally pull two big levers to improve their financial performance. Growing a pie, essentially, and making the existing pie more efficiently.
Growth and productivity.
Exactly. So under revenue growth, there are generally two main themes. One, build a franchise. This involves generating new revenue streams from entering new markets, launching new products or services, or attracting entirely new customer segments. Think about expanding your reach, finding totally new avenues for growth. Two, increase value to existing customers. This is all about deepening relationships with the customers you already have, maybe through expanded sales of your current offerings, perhaps cross-selling complementary products or services, or maybe offering bundled solutions instead of just individual items. It's really about getting more value from your loyal customer base.
Okay, grow the business overall and grow within the current customer base. Makes sense. What about the other lever, productivity?
Right, the productivity side also typically has two main components. One, improve cost structure. This means aggressively reducing both direct and indirect expenses across the board, finding efficiencies in every corner of the business, becoming leaner. Two, use assets more efficiently. This involves optimizing how you utilize your existing resources, your plants, equipment, working capital. It's about reducing the working and fixed capital needed to support a given level of business, and basically getting more output, more bang for your buck from the assets you already have.
So it's a clear and pretty critical balance. Grow the overall pie and make the existing pie much more efficiently. Looking at those, it sounds like productivity improvements might yield results faster, maybe, but revenue growth is often the bigger, more sustainable long-term play. Is that fair?
That's generally yes. And it represents a key balance. The productivity strategy, cutting costs, improving asset utilization, typically yields tangible financial results sooner than the revenue growth strategy does. You can usually cut costs or streamline processes faster than you can cultivate entirely new markets or significantly deepen complex customer relationships.
Right.
But, and this is really important, one of the principal contributions of having a strategy map is that it explicitly highlights the crucial opportunities for enhancing financial performance through that revenue growth dimension. Not just by relentlessly focusing on cost reduction and improved asset utilization, which can sometimes be tempting for short-term gains.
Okay.
It helps ensure that those necessary cost and asset reductions don't inadvertently compromise or strangle a company's vital future growth opportunities with customers. It forces a more holistic long-term view that prevents short-term efficiency gains from crippling long-term strategic potential. It's about balancing both.
Okay, that makes sense. So after the financials at the top, it's all about who you serve and how you interact with them, the customer perspective. What makes this layer so vital, and why is it usually the next one down from financials on the map? It feels like the direct link between the company and the outside world.
It absolutely is. The customer perspective is truly the core of any business strategy because it's what directly enables those financial outcomes we just talked about. You can't have sustainable financial success without happy, paying customers.
Sure.
This perspective revolves around clearly defining your customer value proposition. And this is absolutely crucial. It's that unique mix of product attributes, service levels, customer relationship quality, and corporate image that you offer, which sets your company apart from the competition.
Your differentiator.
Exactly. It fundamentally defines how your organization will differentiate itself to attract, retain, and ideally deepen relationships with your chosen targeted customers. And its critical link on the map is that it directly connects your internal processes and capabilities, what you do inside the company, to improved outcomes for your customers outside the company.
Okay, so how do companies typically differentiate themselves to customers? Is there a standard playbook here, or is it always a completely bespoke creation for each company?
Well, there are generally three core ways or value disciplines that companies typically choose from to differentiate themselves. And the key strategic insight here, based on a lot of research, is that you generally need to pick one of these to truly excel at, to be genuinely world-class in, while maintaining at least acceptable threshold standards in the other two. Trying to be truly excellent at all three simultaneously is usually a recipe for mediocrity everywhere, spreading yourself too thin.
Okay, so focus is key. What are the three?
The three main ones are: 1. Operational excellence. If this is your focus, you stress things like competitive pricing, reliable product quality and selection, speedy and predictable order fulfillment, and consistently on-time delivery. Think of companies famous for efficiency and reliability, like maybe McDonald's for its consistent service, or Dell Computer historically, famous for its streamlined supply chain and cost-effectiveness.
Got it. Low price, reliable, fast.
Pretty much. The second one is customer intimacy. This strategy emphasizes the quality of your relationships with individual customers. It often involves exceptional personalized service and offering complete tailored solutions designed to meet their unique needs. Home Depot is often cited as a good modern example, with its focus on helping DIY customers solve their specific project problems. Or think about IBM back in its heyday in the 60s and 70s, which built its entire reputation on deep client relationships and bespoke computing solutions.
Right, knowing your customer really well.
Exactly. And the third one is product leadership. If this is your chosen differentiator, you concentrate relentlessly on the functionality, the features, and the overall cutting-edge performance of your products or services. You're constantly innovating, pushing the boundaries, and bringing new capabilities to the market first. Intel in microprocessors or Sony in consumer electronics are classic examples of companies that have excelled here, always striving to have the best, newest product.
Okay, operational excellence, customer intimacy, product leadership. What's fascinating here is that you said companies generally need to pick one to truly excel at. Is that always clear to everyone inside an organization? Because I can easily imagine a lot of companies saying, maybe even believing, that they're great at all three. We have the best products, the best service, and the lowest prices.
You put your finger on a very common and often critical pitfall, something we observed quite strikingly in our research. We found that approximately 3/4, a huge majority of executive teams, actually do not have real consensus among themselves about which of these value propositions they are truly pursuing.
3/4. Wow.
Yeah. They might indeed say we're operationally excellent and customer intimate and product leaders, which, as we discussed, usually means they're not truly excelling at any one of them effectively. This fundamental lack of clarity and focus at the very top inevitably trickles down and creates confusion, conflicting priorities, and inefficiency throughout the entire organization. And it highlights precisely why creating a strategy map, forcing that explicit choice and alignment, is so desperately needed in many companies.
Yeah.
If the leadership team itself isn't clearly aligned on how they intend to differentiate and win with customers, how can anyone else in the organization possibly execute consistently on that promise? It's like, as you said earlier, asking an orchestra to play a beautiful symphony when half the musicians have completely different sheet music in front of them. It just leads to noise.
Right. Okay, so now we get down to the how, the engine room. You called it earlier the internal processes perspective. This is where the actual day-to-day work gets done to deliver on those customer promises and ultimately achieve those financial goals, right? This feels like the operational heart of the strategy map.
Precisely. This is where strategy gets translated into action. Once the customer value proposition and the financial objectives are clearly articulated higher up on the map, this internal process perspective determines the operational means, the crucial activities and capabilities the organization must excel at to actually achieve that differentiated value proposition for its customers and deliver the productivity improvements needed for its financial objectives. It captures the critical organizational activities required for success.
So what kind of processes are we talking about here?
They're typically categorized into 4 high-level types of processes that need to work together effectively. 1. Build the franchise. This category is all about innovation and long-term growth. It includes processes for developing new products and services, launching entirely new business lines, and penetrating new markets or customer segments. It's about creating the future of the company.
Okay, innovation.
2. Increase customer value. This focuses on processes related to managing and deepening relationships with your existing customers. Things like customer relationship management, CRM, delivering exceptional service, cross-selling, upselling, ensuring customers remain loyal, are highly satisfied, and potentially become even more profitable over time.
Managing current customers. Got it.
3. Achieve operational excellence. This involves processes focused on constantly improving your core operations. Things like supply chain management, driving down the cost of internal processes, enhancing product or service quality, shortening cycle times for delivery. It also includes optimizing asset utilization and capacity management, essentially, getting more done with less more efficiently day after day.
Core efficiency.
And 4, become a good corporate citizen. This acknowledges the growing importance of processes related to establishing effective, ethical, and responsible relationships with all external stakeholders. This includes regulators, the communities where you operate, environmental agencies, and so on. It reflects the need to create broader societal value, not just shareholder value.
That seems incredibly comprehensive, covering innovation, customers, operations, and stakeholders. But if companies generally know these different types of processes are important, why do they still often struggle to execute strategies that rely on them, especially growth strategies? What's the common disconnect here?
What's really fascinating here is a common and quite profound disconnect we often observe in practice. Many companies will say they prioritize innovation or developing really deep, value-adding customer relationships. They'll talk the talk. But then they mistakenly only measure and reward things related to the cost and quality of their existing operations.
The metrics don't match the strategy.
Exactly. There's a complete disconnect between their stated strategy, for example, we want to be innovators, and how they actually measure performance and incentivize behavior internally. Example, cut costs at all expense. Not surprisingly, these organizations typically have great difficulty implementing their growth or innovation strategies effectively because their internal measurement systems aren't actually driving the right behaviors or rewarding the right kind of work needed for that strategy.
It's like saying you want to win a marathon, but you only train your athletes for the 100-meter sprint and measure their sprint times?
That's a perfect analogy. A strategy map forces you to explicitly align your measurements and objectives in the internal process perspective with your chosen customer value proposition and overall strategic aspirations. It prevents this fundamental strategic gap because ultimately you tend to get what you measure right. And if you only seriously measure operational efficiency and short-term cost-cutting, that's almost certainly all you'll truly excel at, even if your stated strategy is something completely different, like product leadership or customer intimacy. It's also worth noting that the financial benefits from improving these different business processes typically reveal themselves in different time horizons, which the map helps to illustrate and manage.
How so?
Well, cost savings that come from increased operational efficiencies and process improvements usually create pretty short-term financial benefits. You see them relatively quickly. Revenue growth that comes from enhancing customer relationships and building loyalty tends to accrue more in the intermediate term as that loyalty builds and maybe new services are adopted by existing customers. And then the payoff from increased innovation developing breakthrough products or entering entirely new markets that can produce really significant long-term revenue and margin improvements, but it often takes longer to materialize. A complete robust strategy really needs to generate returns from all three of these internal process categories: innovation, customer management, and operations, not just focus myopically on, say, short-term cost-cutting at the expense of the others. The map helps visualize that balance over time.
Right. Okay. And finally, we get to the bedrock, what makes all of this possible and sustainable in the long run. The learning and growth perspective. So we've looked at the financial goals, the what, the customer value proposition, the who and why, and the internal processes, how the work gets done. But none of that is truly sustainable without the right people, the right knowledge, the right culture, and the right tools, is it? Which naturally brings us to the very foundation of the strategy map, learning and growth.
It absolutely is the fundamental enabler for everything else on the map. You're right. The learning and growth perspective forms the essential foundation of any strategy map. It explicitly defines the core competencies and skills your people need to develop and master, the critical technologies you must leverage and implement effectively, and the kind of corporate culture that's required to truly support and drive your organization's chosen strategy.
So it's about the inputs needed for the future.
Exactly. Its overarching purpose is to enable a company to align its human resources, its people capabilities, and its information technology capabilities directly with its strategy. It ensures that the organization has the right muscle and brain power, if you will, to actually execute everything else defined on the map.
So it's really about making deliberate strategic investments in your people, your systems, and your culture to build future capability, to create the fertile ground where strategic success can actually grow and be sustained.
That's a great way to put it, creating the fertile ground.
But what's the main challenge here? Because it sounds almost obvious that you need good people and good technology. Why do companies struggle with this layer?
What's fascinating here is that while pretty much all executive teams readily acknowledge the critical importance of the learning and growth perspective, I mean, who's going to argue that people and technology aren't vital these days?
Right. Nobody.
Exactly. But despite that universal agreement, they generally have significant trouble defining the corresponding specific, measurable objectives for this perspective. It often ends up being quite vague on scorecards, things like improve employee morale or invest in IT.
Okay, too fuzzy.
Too fuzzy, exactly. The strategy map forces them to get much more concrete. It pushes them to clearly articulate how, specifically, they will satisfy the precise requirements that stem from the critical internal processes they need to excel at, the differentiated value proposition they've committed to offering their customers, and the specific nature of their overall customer relationships. It's about figuring out what specific skills do our people need to learn, what exact knowledge is missing, what new systems are required, and what precise cultural attributes do we need to foster to make everything else on the map, those higher-level objectives and processes, customer and finance, actually happen. It pushes them from generic agreement about importance to concrete, actionable objectives for building capability. 4. Strategy maps in action. The mobile success story. Okay, so that's the theory, the 4 perspectives, the cause and effect logic. We've mapped out the different layers and how they ideally interconnect. But how does this actually play out in the messy real world? Theory is great, but practical application is where it truly shines and shows its power, isn't it?
So let's talk about that mobile example you mentioned earlier. That sounds like a really compelling case study.
It really is. Mobile North American marketing and refining provides a fantastic, truly transformative example of strategy maps in action. Back in the early 1990s, they faced a absolutely monumental challenge. They essentially needed to reconstruct themselves almost completely from being a centrally controlled traditional manufacturer of commodity products, basically, just pumping out gasoline and trying to be the cheapest provider.
Right, the old model.
The old inefficient model.
Yeah.
They needed to transform into a decentralized, highly customer-driven organization focused on delivering value beyond just price. This wasn't just a minor tweak to their operations. It was a huge fundamental shift in their entire business model and culture. A complete strategic pivot.
Wow, that's a massive undertaking for a company that size. And did it actually work? I mean, what were the tangible results of this massive transformation? You don't often hear about a commodity business successfully reinventing itself and becoming a profit leader based on customer experience.
The results were truly remarkable, and they really speak for themselves about the power of this approach when executed well. Mobile increased its operating cash flow by more than $1 billion per year and became the industry's profit leader in the U.S. market.
$1 billion a year.
$1 billion a year increase in operating cash flow. This wasn't just some incremental improvement or a slight bump in performance. It was a complete, dramatic turnaround for that division. And it highlights the tangible, massive benefits that a well-conceived and well-executed strategy, visualized through a strategy map, can deliver. And importantly, they built their map from the top down, precisely as we discussed earlier, starting with their ultimate financial aspirations and cascading down.
Okay, so what were those financial goals then? What was the ultimate destination right at the very top of their map? What did Mobile set out to achieve financially?
Their overall strategic vision, that ultimate destination statement, was to be the best integrated refiner marketer in the United States by efficiently delivering unprecedented value to customers. That's a pretty powerful aspirational statement of intent right there.
Yeah, it is.
And their specific high-level financial goal, the really ambitious, quantifiable target they set, was to increase their return on capital employed, ROCE, by more than 6 percentage points within 3 years. This was a clear, measurable, challenging objective placed right at the very top of their map.
Okay, a big jump in ROCE. How did they plan to achieve that financially? Did they use those growth and productivity levers we talked about?
They did, absolutely. They achieved it by intelligently and simultaneously leveraging all 4 drivers of a successful financial strategy, exactly as outlined in a typical strategy map framework.
Okay.
So for revenue growth, they didn't just focus narrowly on selling more gasoline volume. That would likely have been a race to the bottom on price. Instead, they strategically focused on expanding sales beyond just the gasoline itself, diversifying their offerings at the station level. They put a huge emphasis on selling a much wider range of convenience store products and services, things people actually wanted. They added ancillary automotive services like car washes and oil changes. They pushed other automotive products like their own brand of Mobil 1 oil and antifreeze, and even common replacement parts like tires and wiper blades. They also focused strategically on selling more of their premium gasoline brands, which carry higher margins, and aim to increase their overall sales volume faster than the industry average. So it was really about diversifying the revenue stream at the station and premiumizing their offering to capture more of the customer's total spend, not just their fuel spend.
Smart. And what about the productivity side? Did they work on efficiency too?
Oh, absolutely. They were incredibly aggressive on the productivity front as well. They set a target to slash their operating expenses per gallon of fuel sold down to the industry's absolute lowest level. And they worked relentlessly to extract more value from their existing assets, their refineries, and distribution network. For instance, they focused on significantly reducing expensive downtime at their oil refineries and systematically increasing their yields, which means they got more usable, higher-value product out of the same amount of crude oil input. This was all about achieving lean, highly efficient operations on the production and supply side, even as they were simultaneously aiming for differentiated growth on the customer-facing side. You're in a very deliberate dual approach, attacking both growth and productivity.
Okay, this is where it gets really clever, I think. After setting those ambitious financial goals, how did Mobil decide who to serve and how to serve them? What was their customer strategy? Because you mentioned they went from being just a commodity producer to a truly customer-driven organization, which, as you said, is a massive leap, especially for a gas station company back then.
Yeah, that's the absolute crux of their entire transformation, that customer piece. Before this strategic shift, Mobil had a previous and frankly rather unfocused strategy where they basically tried to sell everything to everyone, primarily competing on low prices, just be the cheapest gas around.
Commodity trap.
Exactly, the commodity trap. And this had led to pretty poor financial performance for them in the early 90s because it's just a very difficult, extremely low margin game to win consistently, especially against leaner competitors.
Right.
But then came the crucial market research insight. And this was their real aha moment, the thing that changed everything. They conducted extensive market research and discovered something fascinating. Those highly price-sensitive consumers, the ones just looking for the absolute cheapest gallon, actually represented only about 20% of the total gasoline purchasers in the market.
Only 20%.
Really? Only 20% were purely price-driven. What's truly fascinating here, the big opportunity they saw, was that nearly 60% of the market, a huge segment, indicated they were willing to pay significant price premiums for gasoline if they could buy it at stations that were consistently fast, friendly, and importantly outfitted with excellent, well-stocked convenience stores.
Wow. So the value wasn't just the fuel.
Exactly. It wasn't just about the cheapest gas, it was about the total experience of buying gas and other items.
Yeah.
This insight completely changed their perspective on the market and what was possible.
So based on that insight, they pivoted pretty dramatically to a differentiated strategy. That sounds like a huge gamble, though, potentially walking away from that price-sensitive 20% and maybe others to focus specifically on a premium segment and delivering a superior experience. That takes guts.
It was a crucial and, yes, brave strategic decision. And they embraced a differentiated value proposition wholeheartedly and built their entire strategy around it. They explicitly decided to target those premium customer segments, the ones willing to pay a bit more for a better experience. And they defined very specifically what that experience would entail. Things like immediate, hassle-free access to gasoline pumps, with every pump equipped with self-payment mechanisms to speed things up significantly.
Yeah, nobody likes waiting.
Nobody. Also, safe, brightly well-lit stations that felt secure, even late at night. Impeccably clean restrooms, which, surprisingly perhaps, is a huge factor for many consumers, especially families. Convenience stores stocked with fresh, high-quality merchandise, not just dusty shelves of old snacks. And critically friendly, helpful employees who actually seemed happy to be there. It was about transforming the entire, often quite uninspiring gas station buying experience into something consistently premium, pleasant, and efficient.
Okay, that's a clear picture. But how did they measure success here? You can't just ask, were we friendly enough? How did they track if they were actually delivering on this premium promise across thousands of stations?
That's a great question. They didn't just rely on vague, generic customer satisfaction surveys, which often don't tell you much. They became incredibly specific and operational about it. They invested heavily in a new measurement system that used anonymous mystery shoppers every single month.
Ah, mystery shoppers.
Yes, these shoppers would go to literally every mobile station nationwide, purchase fuel and maybe a snack or a drink, and then meticulously evaluate their entire buying experience based on 23 very specific, predefined criteria. Everything from the cleanliness of the pump area to the speed of the transaction to the perceived friendliness of the employee. This allowed Mobile to get granular, actionable feedback on performance against their standards at every single location, consistently.
That's serious commitment to measurement. Now, you raised an important point earlier. Mobile doesn't actually sell directly to most consumers, right? Their immediate customers are the independent station owners, the franchise retailers who run the stations. How did Mobile factor them into this customer strategy? They seem absolutely critical to delivering that promised premium experience.
You're absolutely right. The dealers are critical. And Mobile recognized this explicitly. They smartly added objectives related to dealer profitability and dealer satisfaction directly onto their customer perspective on the strategy map.
Yeah.
They understood that these independent dealers were a vital link in the whole cause and effect chain of their strategy. Without happy, profitable, motivated dealers, they simply couldn't deliver consistently on their premium promise to the end consumer. The dealers had to buy in.
That makes perfect sense. The dealers are literally the face of the Mobile brand to the end consumer every day. It sounds like a virtuous cycle started to emerge from this whole customer strategy once they got it right.
It truly did. Mobile's complete customer strategy, including the dealer component, was brilliantly designed to motivate those independent dealers to consistently deliver that great buying experience. Why? Because that great experience would, in turn, attract an increasing share of those targeted premium consumers.
Right.
These consumers would then buy more products and services, often at premium prices, which directly increased the profits for both Mobile and its dealers. This shared success then motivated the dealers to continue investing in and offering that great buying experience, creating a powerful, self-reinforcing virtuous cycle. And this cycle directly generated the sustainable revenue growth that Mobile needed for its financial strategy at the top of the map.
That's clever.
And what's really fascinating here, again, is the specificity. The customer objectives on their map were not generic things like improved customer satisfaction. There were things like improve mystery shopper scores on friendliness, increase dealer profitability, grow premium gasoline share. They were specific and focused on the company's strategy, making them measurable, actionable, and clearly linked to the overall goals.
Okay, so to actually deliver on that differentiated customer promise day in and day out, what internal gears did they really have to turn? This is where the internal process perspective really comes alive, right? Showing how they operationally delivered that value.
Exactly. This is the engine room. Mobile's internal process objectives were very clearly and tightly aligned to directly support their new customer value proposition and their financial strategies. They included objectives across those 4 categories we discussed. Under building the franchise, they intensely focused on processes for developing new products and services, like significantly increasing the sales and profitability from their convenience store operations, which, remember, were a key part of their differentiated offering beyond just selling gasoline.
Right, the non-gas revenue.
Precisely. Then, under enhancing customer value, this wasn't just about the end consumer. It was also crucially about supporting their immediate customers, the dealers. Mobile focused intensely on processes for training dealers to become better business managers overall, and specifically helping them generate more profits from those higher-margin, non-gasoline products and services.
Why was that so important?
Well, the strategic goal here was actually quite brilliant. If the dealers could capture increased revenues and profits from things other than gasoline, like coffee, snacks, car washes, they would become less reliant on gasoline sales volume for their own profitability. This, in turn, allowed Mobile potentially to capture a larger profit share from its wholesale sales of gasoline to those dealers without hurting the dealer's overall success. It's a very clever way of creating mutual benefit and aligning incentives.
Wow, that is clever. Okay, what else?
Further customer intimacy focus with the end consumer, delivered through the dealers, Mobile had to build internal processes to excel at understanding its different consumer segments, going far beyond just basic demographics. And because, as we noted, Mobile doesn't sell directly to consumers, the company also had to concentrate internally on building best-in-class franchise teams, meaning developing strong internal capabilities to support, train, and equip those dealers who were directly interacting with the end consumer, giving them everything they needed to deliver the consistent Mobile experience.
Now, this is interesting. Mobile clearly adopted a kind of customer intimacy strategy for the consumer experience at the station level. But you mentioned earlier that operational excellence often focuses heavily on cost and quality in production. How did that balance play out in their internal processes? Did they suddenly ignore operational efficiency in their refineries and distribution just because they were trying to be customer intimate at the pump?
That's a really keen observation, and it highlights a key insight that came directly from their strategy map development. Mobil actually placed a very heavy continued emphasis on internal process objectives related to improving its basic refining and distribution operations. This meant aggressively lowering operating costs in those areas, significantly reducing costly equipment downtime, and continually improving the quality of the fuel products themselves and the reliability of on-time deliveries to the stations.
So they did both, focused on customer experience, A&D core efficiency.
They absolutely did. And this raises an important strategic question for many companies. Why maintain such a strong focus on operational excellence in production when your overall customer strategy is based on intimacy and differentiation delivered at the retail level?
Yeah.
The answer for Mobil was that while they adopted a customer intimacy strategy for the consumer experience at the station, their own core upstream business producing gasoline, heating oil, jet fuel remained fundamentally that of a large-scale commodity producer. They simply couldn't charge their dealers higher wholesale prices just because their own manufacturing processes were inefficient. The competitive market wouldn't bear that.
Ah, okay.
So, to ensure they remained profitable and competitive overall, they had to continue focusing heavily on achieving operational excellence throughout their entire upstream value chain refining, supply, distribution. This allowed them to produce the core commodity product efficiently, which created the financial capacity and the reliable supply needed to support the premium customer experience strategy downstream without having to pass on internal inefficiencies to their dealers or, ultimately, to consumers. It's a powerful illustration of how different parts of the same organization can, and often must, have different strategic imperatives that ultimately support an integrated whole.
That makes a lot of sense. Anything else on the process front?
Yes. Finally, as part of both its operational excellence push and its commitment to being a good corporate citizen, Mobil set aggressive internal process objectives aimed at eliminating environmental incidents and safety accidents. Their executives strongly believed that if there were injuries, spills, or other problems at work, it was a clear indicator that employees weren't paying sufficient attention to details across the board, which directly undermined their pursuit of overall excellence and their broader strategic aspirations. Safety and environmental performance became key process metrics.
Okay. And what about the people and systems needed to make all this happen, the foundation? What did Mobil identify they needed to learn and grow? What foundational capabilities did they have to build internally to make this massive strategic shift a reality? This brings us back to the learning and growth perspective, the bedrock of the map.
Yes, this was the true foundation that really enabled everything else we've talked about. Mobil identified several absolutely key needs in this critical learning and growth area. First, they realized their employees needed to gain a broader understanding of the marketing and refining business from end to end. People couldn't just operate in their functional silos anymore. Everyone needed to see the bigger picture of the entire value chain and understand how their specific work impacted others upstream and downstream.
Break down the silos.
Exactly. Second, they recognized they had to deliberately nurture leadership skills for their managers at all levels across the organization. These leaders needed to be equipped to effectively articulate the company's new vision, inspire their teams to embrace the change, and actively develop their employees' capabilities to meet the new demands.
To develop the leaders.
Third, Mobil identified crucial technologies it absolutely had to develop and implement to support the strategy. This included things like automated equipment for better monitoring and control refining processes to boost efficiency, and very significantly, extensive databases and tools to analyze consumers' buying experiences. That last one ties directly back to their mystery shopper program and their whole differentiated customer strategy. You simply can't deliver a tailored, premium experience consistently if you don't have the systems to capture and deeply understand exactly what your customers value and how you're performing in their eyes.
Right, the data and analytics piece.
Absolutely critical for them.
What's really fascinating here is just how tightly all these different layers of the map seem to interconnect and reinforce each other in the Mobil story. It's clearly not just a random collection of separate goals. It looks like a living, dynamic system where each piece logically feeds into the next.
Exactly right. And The real power of this alignment, this interconnectedness, became incredibly evident once mobile had completed its overall corporate strategy map. What happened next was that the different business units and the various service departments throughout the company then developed their own, more detailed, localized maps, essentially cascading the corporate strategy down into their specific operating contexts.
Okay, so maps within maps.
Maps within maps, exactly. And this cascading process itself was incredibly valuable because, as they reported, it helped the company detect and fill major gaps in the strategies being implemented at lower levels. It acted like a diagnostic tool, revealing where the strategic intent from the top was perhaps breaking down, getting misinterpreted, or just wasn't being translated effectively into action further down the organization.
So it helped them find critical blind spots or inconsistencies that might have otherwise gone completely unnoticed until it was too late. Like finding a missing piece in that complex house blueprint you mentioned earlier before they started building the wall.
Absolutely, that's a perfect analogy. For example, during this cascading process, senior management noticed that one particular business unit had absolutely no objectives or metrics related to dealers on their localized strategy map, despite dealers being absolutely central to the overall corporate strategy of delivering a premium experience.
Whoa, that's a big red flag.
A huge red flag.
Yeah.
It immediately raised critical questions. Had this unit somehow figured out a revolutionary new way to bypass dealers entirely, making them irrelevant to their part of the business? Were dealer relationships suddenly no longer strategic for them for some reason? Or was it simply a significant, potentially crippling oversight in translating the strategy? In another case, a different business unit's map had no measure whatsoever relating to product or service quality. Again, this raised questions. Had they somehow miraculously achieved perfection already? Or was this a critical omission that would inevitably undermine the entire mobile value proposition of quality and reliability over time? Strategy maps explicitly help uncover and remedy such omissions, ensuring true, consistent strategic alignment for the C-suite all the way down to the front lines. It's about revealing and enforcing those crucial connections and preventing strategic drift.
That's powerful stuff. What stands out most to you about how this all came together for mobile, maybe beyond just the map structure itself? Were there any specific, particularly innovative outcomes that they might not have achieved without having this level of strategic clarity and communication, things that really prove the map's real-world impact beyond just alignment?
Well, what's truly fascinating here, and a key benefit of the whole approach, is how strategy maps fundamentally prevent companies from falling into the trap of building what Kaplan Norton called stakeholder scorecards, or generic KPI scorecards.
What do you mean by that?
Those are essentially just ad hoc, often disconnected collections of measures that different departments might track, but they don't necessarily hang together strategically. They don't tell a coherent story about how value is created. A true strategy map, like mobile's, clearly shows the how. It illustrates the specific value proposition, the precise internal processes that deliver it, the required employee skills and learning, and the necessary IT capabilities that enable the whole strategy to work as an integrated system. It's the complete integrated pathway, not just a random shopping list of metrics.
Okay, it's the story, not just the numbers.
Exactly. And perhaps the greatest, most tangible demonstration of this integrated thinking at mobile was the invention and successful rollout of the Speed Pass system.
Yes, Speed Pass. I remember that.
Right, a real game changer at the time. And importantly, this wasn't just some random invention that popped up out of nowhere or a lucky break. The initial idea for Speed Pass, that small keychain device you could wave at the pump for automatic payment, which revolutionized convenience and speed.
Yeah, it was magic back then.
It really felt like it. That idea actually came from a planning manager working within Mobile's marketing technology group. And where did he get the initial spark, the insight? He learned directly from Mobile's balanced scorecard and the associated strategy map about the critical strategic importance of speed in the customer purchasing transaction. It was explicitly highlighted as a key element of their fast, friendly service value proposition designed to attract those premium customers.
Wow. So the strategy map, the scorecard, directly inspired a major innovation at an operational level. It empowered an individual manager to see a problem defined by the strategy and invent a solution that connected directly back to the bigger strategic picture.
That's incredible. It absolutely is. It's a perfect illustration. Because the strategy was so clear, speed matters, he was able to recognize the opportunity. He came up with the concept of a device that could automatically handle the entire purchasing transaction, payment authorization, pump activation, receipt, radically cutting down on friction and customer wait times. And because the strategy was so clear and well communicated, with explicit objectives and clear connections shown on the map, he was able to get buy-in and work seamlessly with external partners, a gasoline pump manufacturer and a semiconductor company, to turn that innovative idea into a working reality relatively quickly. After its introduction, SpeedPass quickly became a strong differentiator for mobile's value proposition of fast, friendly service. It perfectly reinforced their strategy. And they didn't just launch it and forget it. They actually incorporated it explicitly back into their scorecard and map, setting new objectives for increasing consumer and dealer adoption of SpeedPass technology. It's a perfect example of how a clear strategic objective, visually communicated through a map, can directly lead to a concrete differentiating innovation that drives market leadership and reinforces the strategy itself. It becomes a virtuous cycle of strategy informing innovation and innovation strengthening strategy.
That's fantastic. And what were the overall bottom line results of all this? The strategic clarity, the internal alignment, the innovation like SpeedPass. You mentioned earlier they became the industry profit leader. Just how dramatic was the financial and operational turnaround in the end?
Mobile's North American marketing and refining division executed a truly remarkable turnaround in less than 2 years after implementing this strategy map approach. They went from being a laggard to becoming the undisputed U.S. industry profit leader from 1995, right up through its eventual merger with Exxon in late 1999.
Wow.
Their return on capital employed, ROCE, that key financial metric they targeted, soared from a mediocre 6% before the strategy change to an impressive 16% afterwards. Their sales growth consistently exceeded the overall industry average by more than 2% annually, proving they weren't just cutting costs to achieve profitability, they were actually growing the top line faster than competitors too.
Growth and profitability.
Exactly. Their underlying cash operating expenses decreased by a very significant 20%, showing the productivity initiatives were also working.
Yeah.
And the bottom line impact. By 1998, the division's annual operating cash flow was over $1 billion per year, higher than when they first launched their new strategy map-driven approach. Just a staggering financial improvement.
Incredible number.
And crucially, these impressive financial results weren't just isolated or coincidental. The data showed they were clearly driven by tangible improvements across every perspective of Mobile's strategy map. Those mystery shopper scores, measuring the customer experience, increased significantly each year. Dealer quality and profitability also improves consistently, showing the key relationship strengthened. The number of consumers actively using SpeedPass grew by about 1 million users annually, validating both the innovation and the customer-centric approach.
Okay.
On the internal process side, those environmental and safety accidents plunged by between 60% and 80%, indicating vastly improved operational excellence and attention to detail throughout the organization. Lost oil refinery yields due to unexpected systems downtime dropped by a massive 70%, boosting productivity and efficiency dramatically.
Huge improvements.
And perhaps most telling of all, especially regarding those intangible assets, internal surveys showed that employee awareness and commitment to the company's strategy more than quadrupled during this period. People understood the plan, they believed in it, and they knew how their work contributed. This wasn't just a strategy document sitting on a shelf. It had become a real movement, driven by clarity, alignment, and shared understanding fostered by the strategy map. The enduring power of strategy maps, moving from art to discipline.
So wrapping this all up, what does this incredible mobile story and everything we've discussed about strategy maps really mean for us, for managers, for organizations today? What's the biggest, most impactful takeaway from this whole deep dive? It really sounds like they take the often elusive art of strategy formulation and somehow turn the description and execution of strategy into something much more concrete, something that can actually be managed, measured, and successfully executed across an organization.
That's a really profound point, and I think it gets right to the heart of their enduring power and value. While the formulation of great strategies is an art, and it probably always will remain so, requiring that spark of creativity, deep insight, vision, intuition.
Right, the big idea.
The big idea. While that part is art, the description of that strategy should not be an art. It shouldn't be vague or ambiguous or open to multiple interpretations. It needs to be a precise, clear, unambiguous language that everyone can understand. And strategy maps bring a much-needed discipline to this description process. They make the strategy tangible, visually understandable, and critically actionable for everyone in the organization, from the CEO down to the frontline employee.
And the benefits of that discipline seem huge.
They really are. The benefits are far-reaching and truly fundamental to achieving strategic success in today's complex world. First, as Mobile showed, They significantly increase the likelihood of successful strategy implementation, simply because everyone understands the plan and their role within it.
Makes sense.
Second, organizations that use them begin to view their strategies in a much more cohesive, integrated, and systematic way, rather than seeing them as just a collection of disjointed departmental initiatives or siloed projects that don't necessarily connect.
Seeing the whole system.
Seeing the whole system. Third, as we saw with mobile's gap detection, strategy maps often expose gaps, inconsistencies, or contradictions in strategies before they become critical problems during execution. This allows executives to take early corrective actions and course correct much more effectively and proactively.
Catching problems early.
Exactly. And perhaps most powerfully, they serve as a solid, visible foundation for building a comprehensive strategic management system. A system that can help an organization implement its crucial growth initiatives and strategic pivots effectively and rapidly, even when facing complex internal challenges or turbulent external environments. They provide the framework for ongoing strategic management.
So it's really not just about drawing up the initial plan on a map. It's about making that plan a living, breathing part of the organization's management system, something that can be constantly monitored, adapted, tested, and improved over time. It almost feels like applying the scientific method to business strategy execution.
That's an excellent way to think about it. Strategy, by its very nature, implies the movement of an organization from its current position to a desirable but inherently uncertain future position. You're trying to get somewhere new.
Right, the future is uncertain.
Exactly. And because you've never actually been to this specific future place before, the pathway you chart to get there necessarily consists of a series of linked hypotheses. This is a crucial concept. A strategy is essentially a set of educated guesses about cause and effect.
Hypotheses.
A strategy map explicitly specifies these crucial cause and effect relationships, these if we do X, then Y should happen statements. By making these hypotheses visual and explicit, the map makes them not only clear for everyone to see, but also testable. You can look at the map, see the hypothesized links. If we improve dealer training, then customer satisfaction should rise, and then go out and gather real-world data to confirm or refute those hypotheses over time. It moves strategy execution from being a kind of black box mystery to becoming an observable, manageable system based on evidence.
Testing your assumptions as you go.
Precisely. The key, then, to effectively implementing strategy in this way is to ensure that everyone in the organization clearly understands these underlying hypotheses laid out on the map. Then, you need to align all the organizational units and resources behind executing actions consistent with those hypotheses. You need to test the hypotheses continually through robust measurement systems linked to the map. And then, crucially, you need to use those results, the feedback from reality, to adapt the strategy, refine the hypotheses, and learn as required. It turns strategy execution into a continuous learning and improvement cycle, all driven and guided by that clear, shared visual map. It transforms strategy from just an abstract idea or an annual planning document into a disciplined, measurable, adaptable management practice.
That's incredibly powerful. Considering the truly incredible transformation we saw at Mobile, a huge company that literally rebuilt itself from the ground up using this very framework, just imagine the possibilities within your own organization or even your own team. If everyone, truly everyone, from the top floor right down to the front lines, had a crystal clear shared map of exactly where you're going and precisely how you collectively intend to get there. What strategic gap might a clear strategy map reveal for you? What hidden levers for performance could it help you finally pull?
It's a great question to ponder, because ultimately, strategy isn't just a static document you create once a year or a vision statement that sounds nice. It's got to be a living, adaptable framework.
Yeah.
And it constantly needs that clarity, that consistent communication, and that systematic testing and feedback loop provided by something like a strategy map if it's going to truly thrive, come alive, and drive tangible, sustainable results throughout an entire organization. It really is the difference between just hoping for strategic success and actively, systematically engineering it.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today. Really fascinating stuff. Until next time, keep mapping your path to success. See you later. Bye.